Welcome to the video, Pragmatic Constructionism, Using Constructionism to Enhance Therapeutic Outcomes. My name is Dr. Stephen Bacon. I'm a clinical psychologist in Santa Barbara, California, and I've spent the past decade writing books and researching exactly how psychotherapy works. Opening the doors. The doors of therapeutic perception and possibility have been opened wide by the recognition that we are actively constructing our mental realities rather than simply uncovering or coping with an objective truth. Knowing that most of what we encounter in psychotherapy and psychopathology is constructed allows the constructionist therapist and the client a level of freedom and creativity that is completely unavailable via the medical model. The constructionist therapist walks into every client situation knowing that many things are possible, that reality is essentially fluid, and that most people and therapists are confused about how things work. The situation, therefore, is much less stuck than it might seem. Beginner's mind. Shenru Suzuki is famous for pointing out that in the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, but in the expert's there are few. Standard therapists are experts who operate from the few possibilities available in the medical model. Constructionists operate from a relatively unlimited worldview, one that allows and encourages clients to change and grow gracefully, easily, yet with depth and meaning. The constructionist is like someone who is standing on a tall hill with a view of many environments. They see the standard therapist below, struggling with elaborate details that usually make things harder and more challenging, instead of easier and more graceful. Deconstruction is key. No one can become a constructionist without letting go of limiting assumptions. Rooting out every vestige of the medical model, being aware of the subtle underlying assumptions and rejecting them, is a necessary practice. In the following quote, Erickson discusses rejecting the implicit and explicit assumptions of psychological systems and replacing them with a focus on individual fits and needs. And I do wish the Rogerian therapist, Gestalt therapists, transactional analysts, group analysts, and all the other offspring of various theories would recognize that not one of them really recognizes that psychotherapy for person number one is not psychotherapy for person number two. I treated many conditions, and I always invent a new treatment in accord with the individual personality. I know that when I take us out to dinner, I let the guests choose what to eat because I don't know what they like. I think that psychotherapy is an individual procedure. The research results create new possibilities. Constructionism has been a significant force in the culture for over 50 years and has had a meaningful impact on psychotherapy as well. However, the research results elevate its importance from a significant influence to a ruling paradigm. The results force us to shift from the medical model to the constructionist model. More specifically, one needs to test every general statement about psychotherapy against the findings that techniques lack inherent power and our privileged knowledge is unrelated to outcomes. Put positively, this means that the way forward, our evolutionary path, has shifted from developing techniques that resolve our diagnoses to exploring the possibilities of change that arise in a fluid, open reality. Pragmatic Constructionism. There are many forms of constructionism, from radical constructionism to social constructionism to constructivism. Essentially, they are philosophical worldviews that have influenced psychotherapy. Well-known examples include the way Gergen's relational being has come to characterize social constructionism, and the way that narrative therapy's approach has popularized Foucault's power analyses. While this approach has much in common with other forms of constructionism, it differs in that it is grounded in the research results and focused on enhancing outcomes. In that sense, it can be called pragmatic constructionism, in that it continually measures its recommendations against a real-world, client-centered ruler. It tries to be useful as opposed to be true. Another measure of its pragmatism is that it is oriented toward developing measurable training and experience effects. Is a new idea sufficiently useful that knowing it lets the trained best the untrained? Does the new idea describe the therapeutic milieu sufficiently that a practitioner becomes more effective as they gain experience? The final measure has to do with the level of fluidity experienced by the practitioner. Are the constructionist ideas sufficiently useful that the practitioner can envision the client changing without the limits imposed by the medical model? Principles of Pragmatic Constructionism. Number 1, deconstruct the extant explanations from psychological systems and clients. 2, create case conceptualizations that are easier to resolve, more meaningful, more convincing, more motivating, and generate sustainable structures. Number 3, understand the therapeutic milieu, constructed reality, in the context of the research results and the latest behavioral genetics research. Number 4, client-centered. Deconstructing systems requires the therapist to lean into client factors. These include motivations and assumptions, the client path, external factors that affect or limit movement, and the transactional emotions and feelings linked to those factors. Principles of Pragmatic Constructionism. Continued. Number 5, Kill the Buddha stories highlight useful principles. They illustrate the way in which constructionists need to move beyond philosophic constructionism. They illustrate how to avoid the invent a new system game, and they show how to connect to a certain part of the targeted 45%. Number 6, cultivating charisma and persuasiveness is required to link prescribed actions to change and to work with the challenging 45%. Number 7, cultivating trust, empathy, and ethics have special challenges in a constructionist context, but are necessary to bond with the 45%. Principles of Pragmatic Constructionism. Continued. Number 8, the constructionist needs a place to stand in the fluidity of constructed reality. The initial place to stand is the response to the client's distress. The secondary stance is the enlightenment path of the client. The tertiary stance lies in the therapist's own dance with the abyss. Number 9, the ability of the client to move is limited or expanded by the therapist's ability to see reality as fluid. In this sense, the therapist must be committed to deconstruction while simultaneously recognizing the embedded nature of the client's life. Moreover, they need to have a keen sense of the varied ways different cultures describe psychopathology and its cures. Appreciating the validity of other cultures is requisite for understanding fluidity in our own. Discernment between the real and the unreal is the outstanding characteristic of pragmatic constructionism. Conclusion. The beginning point is always deconstruction. It is enormously challenging to diverge from the standard assumptions of the medical model. Techniques have no power, and privileged knowledge is uncorrelated with outcomes as the measuring criteria. The midpoint is always fluidity. Does my case conceptualization and my intervention exemplify fluidity? Are they significantly easier or more meaningful or more motivating than a standard conceptualization? The endpoint is the place to stand. Constructionism, paradoxically, is the most client-centered approach because when all is done, there is no place to stand but the client's needs and truth.